So welcome everyone. My name is Allar, and I'm one of the senior compositing VFX tutors here at the Escape Studios. And today what I wanted to show you is how to make gizmos in Nuke. So, and also to kind of compare them with ToolSets. And I think we can just kind of jump straight into it. I have a few other things I will want to show you with regards to what we actually do at Escape and stuff, but I'll leave more of that stuff towards the end. So first of all, do check out our Escape Hub website. So the topic today is looking at how to optimize your workflows and how to work faster. Partly, this is meant for slightly bigger pipelines, but also when you work alone, you kind of want to make sure that the things that you have to do repeatedly, you can do them quicker. So what do I mean by that? Let's start with this first example and to explain to you what are tool sets. So let's look at this picture here. So we have a creepy looking guy staring at us or staring past us. And for whatever reason, I may want to shuffle out the individual channels. So for example, I might want to shuffle out the red channel and the green channel and the blue channel and maybe the alpha channel as well if I have one. And there may be multiple reasons why I might want to do that. So for example, if you wanted to make your own desaturation option. So for example, if you do a maximum between all the channels and to compare it with a what we get if you do saturation using the saturation node, that will give us the same result. Okay, or if you did an average in here, or you did an average in here, it would give you again the same result. It did not. Interesting. Oh, that's not actually saying average. Nevertheless, if you did a, for example, CCIR 601, what does that one mean? Well, basically, actually, no, let's do Rec 709. What that would mean is that if out of every single channel I take a little bit, but a different amount, I take that, 20% of red, 70% of green, 7% of blue, then that's one way I could represent brightness or like a desaturated image. That's not really the topic here. The idea is that I may have a reason why I might want to have my channels shuffled out, and one of these reasons could be that I want to make my own desaturation algorithm. And in fact, when I'm desaturating these things, maybe in here I might be interested more that this time I'm actually more interested in the blue component, so might need more of that. And now you can see we made our own desaturation method that takes these channels and blends them together into this desaturated image, but allows you to take a different weighting. Another reason why I might want to shuffle out the individual channels is I might want to actually do some operations between them. So if I might want to look at the difference between red and green channel and actually find out what that difference is, it looks really cool. But in addition to that, I could use it to do, for example, a quick despill. So if I find out what the difference is between the green and red, or where the green is bigger than red, then maybe in those areas I could make my green smaller, effectively doing what is a very simple despill algorithm. Not a great one for this image, but it works relatively well for the jacket. Again, the point here is that I wanted to shuffle out all the three channels, and doing it multiple times is obviously going to be time consuming. Now there are things that can make it quicker. So, and this is something that the founder recently has been quite good at putting up some quick workflow tutorials for as well. So for example, if you do something on a particular node repeatedly, so for example, if I wanted to shuffle things out of the red channel many times and do it again and again and again, or let's say I just want to shuffle green into everything. And notice I'm using the Nuke 11 version in here with the older version of the shuffle node, but the idea is exactly the same. When you do this, and maybe you want to set a few other settings as well, I like to then make this node green, and I might want to change its label as well. So say green to all, or something like that, green to RGBA. So, and another time I wanted to do the same thing in a new script. You know, if you're in the same script, you can copy paste things, but if you go into a brand new script, you might want to do it again. There's a quick option in Nuke, which is you can make node presets by simply saving them. So if I was to save a preset, and because I've already done this once, so let's call it shuffle green to all. And the next time we make a shuffle node, and that could be in any script, it doesn't have to be in this one. Next time we make a shuffle node, you can go in here and go pick that option, shuffle green to all, and it will take this setting for you. So shuffle green to all. We even get the label, the node color changes, the settings change. So it's a quick way to create this task preset. And like I said, the Foundry has been quite good about this. I can minimize this by doing a few of these workflow videos for Nuke. And this one, for example, is just about task presets. So you can check that one. But I still have to make individual nodes. So it would be even better if I could make nodes all at the same time. So if I've already made a red and a green and a blue and an alpha, I would like to make them all at the same time. So similar to this task preset option, but something that kind of creates all of them at the same time. And this has been around in Nuke for quite a while already. Maybe even from Nuke 7, so nearly sort of maybe 8-9 years, is an ability to create tool sets. So a tool set allows you to take a part of a script and save it, and to be able to reuse it later in any other script again. So for example, we could go in here, which is these two spanners, click on create, and you give your toolset a name. If you want a little menu, I'm going to cancel this. If you want a little menu similar to this one here, 2D or 3D with submenus, then as you create, you can just put backward slashes in here. So for example, if I do a lot of different shuffle channels examples, I could use a forward slash in here, and that would create a submenu. I don't need that for a moment. I just want to shuffle channels, and that will be a tool set that I create for myself. So if I create this tool set and I start typing shuffle, you now notice I have this. These are the different nodes I have in Nuke: shuffle, shuffle copy, shuffle views. But also now I have this tool set called shuffle channels. And when I click on that, I can get this tool set available for me every single time. And then I can do whatever I want with this afterwards. I can, for example, if I don't need alpha, just get rid of it. And if I want to create my own desaturation, I can start again blending them using some different weightings and stuff. So really, then it depends what you actually are going to use this for. One good example for this would be if you have a multi-layer EXR file to use as from CG, and you wanted to pass out all the different passes, all the different layers, and then put them back together using different merge operations. And this is something that you will need to do a lot of the times in your pipeline. Toolsets are really, really useful for that. So that's cool. And this is really, that's amazing. And I have friends who don't actually really use Gizmos too much. They just use ToolSets, and it's very, very powerful. And if you also wanted to share these things with other people, if you wanted to use these in other places yourself, ToolSets will appear in your home folder in this hidden folder called .nuke, in a folder called ToolSets. And you can see in here, it's just a small Nuke script that it has just created. And if I open it in a text editor, it's a simple copy-paste stack. So all Nuke scripts underneath are these little text files that tell you what type of a node it is and what buttons have been changed inside. And depending on the order in which they appear in here and these push and set stacks, that tells them how they appear in a tree. So here there are 4 separate connections connecting to one tree. And this is something that you could now share with your friends. You could email this. These are really, really small, like a few kilobytes at most. So this is 2 kilobytes is because it's a tiny, tiny amount of text. And if your friend has made a good tool set, you can simply put it into this folder. Next time you open Nuke, that one will be available for you, both under this toolset menu in here, or when you just simply type whatever the toolset is called, so shuffle channels. Great. So toolsets are amazing. We could end this lesson here, but we can actually go a little bit further with this. So occasionally, we might want to do things where we don't need all of this structure to be exposed to the artist. So let's make a group which is a starting point for making a gizmo. And let's make a really, really simple group. So I'm going to take this picture of this guy, and let's call him Tom, because that's what his name is, I think. And let's add a little glow to him. So we'll use a classic Steve Wright method for this. We'll do a blur and a plus. And we'll do it the old school way, which is that if you do a blur and merge it over with a plus, like this, what you will find is that that you might really just need 2 things in here. You might need the size slider and the mix slider, and that's all. And even though this is just 2 nodes, what the user actually needs to use is in some ways much less than the options that are available to you in here. So the user doesn't necessarily need to choose whether they're going to be using the Gaussian filter or any other filter. They don't need to. This mask isn't actually being used anywhere in here anyway. So it might be good to hide some of this structure from the user. In the given case, for a Nuke compositor, this is easy. It's just a blur and a plus. But if you had more nodes, then you might want to kind of start hiding them. So what you want to do in these cases, and again, I could just save it as a toolset. This is my glow toolset. But instead, I'm going to actually package this. And I'm going to press Ctrl-G to turn it into a group. So a group is a node which is made out of other nodes. And in a group node, we have this extra button in here, which is the S to show the internals, which you don't have in other nodes. And if I click on this S, you can see that in the inside of this group, I still have my blur node and the plus node, but there's also the input and output, which allow this node to interact with the rest of the script. So that's the input, and this is the output going into the viewer at the moment. And that's great. The problem, however, is that at the moment we don't have any controls in this. But at the same time, that's actually a good thing because this allows us to choose what controls we want to expose to the user. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just expose the size slider from the blur and the mix slider from the merge node. And I'm going to do it the old school way first. This has now been improved, and I will show you that in a moment as well. So the old school way of doing this is you open on the node itself, you right-click on Manage User Knobs, and you can expose knobs that are inside using this pick button in here. So if I open this pick, you can see these are all the nodes that are inside of this group. I'm going to just cancel this so I can actually see them. You don't need to, but it's good to have them. So let's pick, and from the blur node, which is in here, the blur node has two tabs. I want the size slider. And from the merge node, I want the mix slider, so I can kind of fade this effect on and off. And then I can give this a name, and I could call this, let's call it escape glow. So we have two sliders. There's a size and a mix. And we have created our first tool. Now, how this differs from a tool set is that here we have separated the interface, which is what the user is seeing, from the algorithm that actually makes it work. And this is a principle from programming and from application development, which is called information hiding, is that the user doesn't always need to know how the internals of the algorithm actually work. And compositors, they do like to know. They like having lots of nodes. But at the same time, compositors actually just like to get stuff done. So it's very important to only expose the kind of things to the user that gets them the effects the quickest. And then leave them the opportunity to do more if they need to. They can always open this but at the same time, that's kind of where you as a sort of software developer come in, choose how to make this tool most easily usable. So it's partly this UX design here as well. Right. So we have just made our first group. Happy days. In a moment, we will learn how to actually turn it into Gizmo and share it with our friends. At the moment, it only exists inside of this group, inside of this Nuke script, but we will turn it into a Gizmo, which we'll be able to share with our friends. But I want to do a slightly more relevant example of this because just the blur and just the mix doesn't quite make it clear why these principles of information hiding or this abstraction of the algorithms, why they would be relevant for this tool design in here. So let's look at a more complicated example. And in this example, what we want to do is look at the additive keyer. 2 weeks ago, or I think, or slightly longer ago, we did a webinar on keying without an alpha, and that was Clement Carini who did that one for that. So I do recommend you actually going to YouTube and checking that one out, because he had some really good techniques on how to get hair details in there, and he sort of briefly mentioned additive keyer as well, but the technique that he shows goes beyond that. But I will show you the additive keyer because it's a good example of functionality that can be a little bit complicated and daunting to an artist. But what we could do as a tool developer, or if you are more kind of technically minded and wanted to be a technical director, then that's something where you can make it easier for the artists by hiding some of this implementation from them. So this is a classic keying script. We have footage of a green screen. We are pulling a quick key, and I have pulled a really quick and really bad key because that's the point of this tool. It will help us with some of these elements. I've even done a little road in there to make sure we lose a little bit of this hair details. I normally wouldn't do this, but obviously try to key things as well as you possibly can. But here I've just done a really quick road, just a quick key, and we are going to put this over the background. So I'm going to disable this technique over there first, and we can put this over the background. There's no grading at the moment going on either, so it doesn't, the black points don't match or anything like that, but that's not what we're interested in. What we're interested in at the moment is getting hair detail for this background. And the way that the additive keyer technique works is that you look at your original green screen footage and you try to imagine some kind of an ideal version of a green screen, which in my case, I've just picked a constant. And we want to find what is the difference between this constant and this footage. And over here, you can see that, he has blonde hair, and this blonde hair is brighter than the background. So what we could do is if I just, for every single pixel, I take this green color from the background and I subtract it from the foreground. Wherever there is hair detail, there will be something left over. And what I'm going to get is I'm going to get some values that are positive, basically where something was left over. But Nuke also allows you to get values that are negative, where the foreground was darker. So for example, if I look at these lampposts in here, these ones were darker than the green screen. So in those areas, I'm going to get some values that are negative. And turning off the saturation for the moment, we can very simply add these details to the background. So if we just do a plus, I'm adding some positive values over here. So whatever the background value used to be is now going to be just a little bit more for this pixel here. It's whatever the background was plus whatever this is on top of it. And in some other cases, it will be darker because I'm doing negative values. So here it was dark. Now it will be even darker. And that's a basic principle of additive keyer technique. And the way that it works is that I already have my pre-multiplied foreground element here with alpha channel, and I'm modifying the background before I put the alpha channel on top of, before I put this foreground on top of it. And when I do put my foreground on top of it, we now have this foreground and this extra detail that we got from this additive keyer. So just a really quick kind of introduction into what additive keyer does. And you can also see some of the problems that you get with additive keyer. And these problems include things like, first of all, when you compare things with a really saturated green color, you're going to get colors that are all over the place. So maybe if you just desaturate everything first, that would already help. So you can see now the saturation in here, removing the saturation helps me get something that's a bit more like this hair detail. And the other thing as well is with and without this additive keyer also finds all of the differences in your green screen. It brings back all the tracking markers. It brings up all these things that used to be in the garbage map. So you want to make sure that you mask these out and only use it where you actually need it. So I would use it only for the hair in there using a mask. Okay, so now we can see it is helping a little bit. It's also giving us a little bit of a black halo, but we can deal with that separately. So it's a simple technique, relatively. You look at your green screen foreground, you look at your green screen background, find the difference between the two, and the difference is going to be positive if your foreground was brighter and negative if the foreground was darker, and you simply add these values to your background. So if you're adding positive values, you're making it brighter. If you're adding negative values, you're subtracting, you're making it darker. And you really quickly transfer some of these details onto your background without actually doing any keying, so to speak. So additive keyer is a little bit of a misnomer. because usually when we talk about keying, we think about alpha channels and such, whereas here we only deal with the colors. So that's cool. But really, a proper additive keyer looks a little bit more like this. If you go to Nukepedia, you will find several additive keyers out there and different ways people put this together. So this is just an implementation that I've done to help with some of the issues that you get with the additive keyer. So let's quickly look at this. Missing some footage there. So the idea is this. In the given case, in here, we have Tom, and this guy has hair, some hair which is dark and is darker than the green screen. So if I look at some of these values, they are lower. So, 0.36, 0.23. So what I expect to get here is some negative values. And there's some hair detail which is brighter. So again, 0.36 and maybe 0.37. Small difference. But if I look at the red values, there's 0.3, and here we have 0.30. So again, so these values are brighter. So here's a mixture of details that are both darker than the green screen background and brighter than the green screen background. And I want to kind of deal with them separately. So in order to achieve this, we start with the same technique. I'm just comparing it with a green screen. And this constant green screen here is a simple one that I've made. It's just a constant. I just picked a color from there. And you will get better result if you have an actual green screen background, or if you use things like the IBK color node for this to estimate a better green screen. But what we've done in here is we separate out the negative values, which is everything that goes below 0. I'm using a clamp node for that, so I'm just clamping everything above 0. And here I'm clamping everything below 0. So this way I have a branch which is the dark values, everything that's darker than the green screen, and everything that's brighter than this green screen. And what these things would be, so it would be these dark hair details and bright hair details. They go into these two separate branches. And now, using this channel shuffling that I created earlier, I can choose my own blend of foreground and background details, because the difference isn't going to be the same in all of the channels. So for example, if I look at the bright values in here, I can see in red, green, and blue, I'm getting a different amount of detail. So it looks like, for the bright details in the given case, red seems to have have the biggest useful difference. For the negative values, it's hard to visualize negative values, but if I multiply them with -1, they become positive. And over here, we could see that maybe if I look at red, green, and blue, it turns out in the given case, it's the green that has most information. But I want this kind of control myself. So here I'm choosing red, green, blue. What gives me the biggest blend in then? I can still kind of include more red in this or more blue, but that's up to you. And then what you need to do is that earlier when we did these hair details here, we just made them black and white, and it worked because he has blonde hair. But this guy here has slightly auburn hair with some actual color. So we might want to include some color corrections in this as well. So I've just added 2 grade nodes that would allow me to choose the intensity and color of this hair. And we can put them over something like a checkerboard first. And let's view it over here. So we're adding it through a mask. So we're just doing a little bit of these treatments in here. So first I'm going to remove the negative values. So we only have the positive values, only the values that make the background brighter. And I turn off those treatments. So initially, it would make it black and white. I can control the color of those. I'm just grading it. And I can control the intensity if I want to with another kind of gain or multiply in here. And likewise, if I include the dark details, again, I can control how much of them do I want, what color do I want them to be, and the intensity. And this intensity here is important because what you're doing here, because you're adding negative values, making things darker, but it could be that your background is dark already. And for that purpose, what we're doing here, just quickly showing this, is we're looking at the brightness of the background and using it to limit how much of this we're adding to the foreground. Anyways, it's quite a big complex script. And if I was to save this into a tool set and give it to an artist who hasn't used additive gear before, they would probably struggle to figure out what they actually need to do with this. Because basically, if you just give them something like this and say, connect that to your foreground and that to your background and this to your background, and then play with the sliders in there, they'll be like, what? That's a lot of sliders, and this is really complicated. And by the way, this is not a webinar about additive gear, which is why I'm kind of slightly rushing over the algorithm of this, but we're just looking at, it's a complex tool set. So this is, again, why you might want to choose to hide some of this information. And again, the way you would go about this is, if we just make a copy over here, is to select everything that you want to include in your Gizmo. So let's select all of this, and you turn it into a group. It will ask which node you want to use as an output, if you have multiple sort of open connections. And suddenly the script itself is now much smaller, hopefully also simpler. You can kind of lay it out in a moment. And then what you want to do now is you want to expose parameters to the user so that they know what they need to control in order to use this tool that you just created. So I'm just going to call this escape additive gear. I'm going to give it a number because I actually have a few in my script already. So the first thing is, I have a lot of connections in here. And if you just give this to someone, they won't know what's meant to go into connection 1, 2, and 3. So if you look inside of the script, you can see we have these different inputs. And these different inputs have numbers on them. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that input 1 will be the connection that's meant to remain when you turn this node off. So what do I mean by that? Let's look at some other example quickly first. So for example, if I look into something like this glow in here, if you quickly go inside of this, if I enable and disable this merge node, basically you can see that input remains. Whereas it's the A input that gets turned off. And you want this behavior for your whole Gizmo. So what you have to think of the specification of a tool. What does my tool do? So my tool compares foreground and background, green screen, and adds detail to the background. So therefore, it's doing something for the background. So I want to make sure that if I disable this, I will have the effect turned off and the background remains. It's very easy to change this. You can simply disconnect these and put input 1 to whichever one it needs to be and input whatever to anywhere else. Now, the second thing you can do to make this easier for a user is give these inputs reasonable names. So input 1, just call it background. And you can see already, if I go to my node graph, that is now called background. And somewhere here, I had a, so this will be my foreground. And this will be my clean green screen, blue screen. And I didn't want it in the label, I want it in the actual name. So you have to change the actual name of this thing. So now you can see, if I just give this to an artist, it's already a little bit easier for them to start with this. They can do a background, they can do the foreground. You've made it easier. You've improved the user experience in this. We also want the mask in this. In our given case, the mask itself is actually easy to add because we only have one merge node in the end, and we can connect the mask into that. So I don't have an input for this at the moment. I can take any of these other inputs, just label it as mask, and connect it over there, and that will work now. So basically now I have a mask input in my Gizmo as well. So this mask input is here, and I can use it, and you can see it works. Okay. So that's great. But that's at the moment because we just happen to have this merge node in the end that already has a mask input, so I can expose that input and use this mask input. Now we want to start exposing all the connections to the nodes inside. So what would I like to kind of really do with this node? I would like to control the color. I would like to control the intensity. I'll use the gain slider for those, so the multiplier, either one is fine. I'd like to do the color using a gain. I'd like to do the intensity using a gain. I might want it to react to the background luminance using this multiply and the mix slider in here. And that's more or less everything for the black, the dark values. I might also want to kind of deal with these blend values in the beginning as well. How much red and green do I include in this original sort of separation? And that's it. I never need to do anything with this clamp node. The clamp node is there in order to separate positive and negative values. So I don't need to expose any of this. So since Nuke, if I remember correctly, 11 or maybe 10, this part here has become a lot easier because in the past we would have had to do this. You have to go in here, try to pick, and now we have so many nodes in here, trying to figure out which grade was it, which gain node would be difficult. So this is something that they've done to make it a lot easier for us. They've now added this node editing section in here that allows you to drag and drop functionality from one node to another. So I'm going to clear all of this, and I'm going to just open this in here, and I'll start exposing some of these things in here. So let's start editing this. Let's dock this as well. So let's take the grade node, and this will be the intensity of the dark values, and I can drop it in here, and I can simply edit this, give it a good name. So darks intensity. And I can take the next one. This will be the dark values. I can take this gain and edit this, give it a name. This will be the darks color. And repeat the process. I will do one more. I could take this mix slider from the merge, just drag and drop it in here, and we would call this dark, let's call it background luma limit or something like that. Okay, cool. And then we would do the same thing for the light ones, and maybe then we want to start exposing the blend options. But the good thing is it's really quick and easy to now update this control panel of this node in here. You can already see that now I have some sliders, and it's much easier than actually looking at this big scary script and how things are connected. If you just pull the sliders, you can see they have an effect, and they're actually doing something. So that's great. So what we might want to do is that after a while, when you've done a few of these, you will find that actually, so this is one that I made earlier, you might be getting a little bit too many sliders. And it starts getting a little bit cluttered. So we might want to kind of start to organize this a little bit. Again, because you're thinking of this in a way that someone has to use this. Someone who hasn't used this is going to have to look at this and start using it. So what we can do is we can, for example, start grouping things. So I'm going to take a group, and everything that was in this light, I will drop them into that group. And now, because they're inside of this group, I could rename this group itself. This could be the light details and now I don't really need this prefix here that says lights. I could just say this is called, well, mix luma. The name can still remain the same, but the label could now be shorter, because the thing is, with shorter labels, you will actually have a little bit more space on this side as well. So this way we can start grouping these things. So I'll show you what that looks like. So here we have grouped our light details, our dark details, and I have also exposed these color difference controls. So this color differences for the dark values and for the light values separately. So in here, the light values are using mostly the red input. The dark values are using mostly the green input. But because we've grouped them, we made it a little bit easier. And the other thing you can do as well is whenever you're adding new knobs into your Gizmo. So let's look at this group that we've added in here. Whenever we add new knobs, you should add a tooltip to them. So tooltips help the user figure out how this thing is meant to be used. So if I hover over this, it will tell me these knobs help you extract the details, yada, yada, yada. Another thing in here, though, this is a limitation of Nuke, is that unfortunately we can't change tooltips for knobs that have been exposed. It will use the old tooltip for them. But for anything new that we add, like the groups, these are something brand new that we added, we can add a tooltip for them. Another thing that I've done at this stage is this is actually a brand new knob that I've added by taking from the top this one, which is basically a color knob. So with this color knob, the benefit is that inside of my blend node, if I look in the inside of this, in the inside, it's red, green, and blue because that's the order in which they were created. But there's nothing initially telling to the user that this is red, this is green, this is blue. So I thought that maybe if we used a colorful knob that has red, green, blue, we can actually make these relate. So this is red, this is green, this is blue. And when you're making brand new knobs on the top level, you have to somehow tell the inside to actually use them. So let's quickly look at this as an example in here. So let's say I want to add this color knob for this. So I'm going to add a color knob, and I'm going to call it, let's call it dark diff. Okay, and when we go to the inside of this, we just need to make sure that these things are linked. So I'm just going to go to in the inside of that script in here. So this is my blend node that I want this thing to control. And when you create expressions from the top level by control dragging from here to here, these top level controls now drive these buttons inside. So you can see as I change this, these things update. And that's the actual expression that you'll see. We are looking at this parent node. There's a grade node in there, which is this one in here. I've dragged them from the wrong one. I wanted them from the dark difference, sorry. So on the parent level, there's a dark difference knob, and we're looking at the red value for the red. So again, you're thinking about it in a way that's what's easier for the user to use. They don't really need to know how you're doing the saturation. They just want to kind of, have sliders that allow them to deal with the details. A few other things is that what would be nice to have is a mask input. So this one, I've just exposed the mask knob from the merge node at the bottom in there. So in the very end, there's a merge node which has a mask input, and I've simply exposed these values because I think too many gizmos in Nukepedia don't make use of masks. And it's actually very easy to include masks in your gizmos. So as a quick example of that, if you need a mask for your gizmo, but you have multiple merge nodes or something else that's making it more complicated, for example, let's look at a different glow gizmo that we made over here. So inside of this glow gizmo, I have multiple merge nodes, but I still want to have a mask. What you can do is you can make a Keymix, and the Keymix can have a mask input that comes from the outside, and it can show you the original footage or the masked footage. So if you include a mask, then it will limit the effect to an area. If it doesn't, it will affect the whole area. So adding masks is actually easy. You can always put a Keymix into the end of your gizmo and stick a mask input into that. Cool. One last thing with this gizmo that we made is that I might want the viewer to have an option to look at these different inputs before they output them, similar to, for example, a keylight node. In a keylight node, you can view a final result, but you can also view the inside mattes, outside mattes, things like that. I might want this functionality here as well, because if you've never used an additive keyer, you don't know what these dark and bright values are. So for example, we could visualize these dark values or light values by choosing them here accordingly. Let me quickly do this. And in order to do this, what we would need to have is some way of switching between them. So what I have created on the top is I've created a drop-down menu, again, by just choosing a drop-down menu from one of these options. And in a drop-down menu, you simply say what inputs you want, and it will output this from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 0, 1, 2, 3. So we could include this in here. So if I want the final output will be input 0. If I want the details only, because sometimes people like actually just having the data option from your comp, so just have the details only. Or if you want to visualize those details, and they would be dark and light accordingly. And then we simply need to link these to each other. Now, again, you will need an expression that will tell this switch node inside what to react to on this top level in here. And on this top level, we are outputting at the moment. We are doing a the knob itself is called output. So what we want to do is we want to tell it to look at that knob. There's no kind of easy way to drag and drop this. So you actually have to write this expression here. So you say parent and you say output. And now you can see if I pick the first one in here, it's 0, 1, 2, 3. And it allows me to output these different, either the final output, which is my details over the background, or just the details on their own in case I want to merge them on the background myself, or do something else with them. Maybe I want to color correct them or something. This is a visualization of what the dark values are, and this could be useful when I'm dealing with these controls in here. Maybe I want this a little bit more green in there, or more blue maybe component, and the light values. So I'm going to switch this to final output. So at this stage, we have made a good group, but we have not yet made a gizmo. And that's the final step. Let's turn it into a gizmo, something that we can upload to Nukepedia and share with our friends, and hopefully maybe impress our family as well. So final bit in here, you've named your node, you've made this interface as good as possible. You've also clicked on this and said edit help. So you write the big help file for this. The help file appears over here if you hover over this question mark. And again, this is something that user interface design is helpful for. So make sure that you're making something for someone else. So they might not know how to use this. So tell them how to use it. Use it. Connect this and this. Use those controls. Visualize these things, and then change the color and the intensity when you have it. So we need to export this as a gizmo. So let's do export. I'm just going to drop it onto my desktop, and I'll call it escape additive here. And it will label it as gizmo on its own. So again, it will be a little text file. This will be on my desktop. So on my desktop, I have this additive gear gizmo, 7 kilobytes, tiny piece of text. If you look inside, it's just text. This is the part that tells you what the panels are what the knobs are on the main panel, and these are all the nodes that are inside of it. So now you need to install this gizmo for Nuke to know that it exists, because you want to use it in a new, brand new Nuke script. So in order to install Gizmos, that's the final bit in here. We want to go to our .nuke folder, and I generally prefer to put my Gizmos into subfolders because it's tidier that way. So let's make a folder for this. I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm going to call it escape Gizmos. Call it whatever you want, as long as you remember it. I'm just going to drop it in there. At the moment, Nuke doesn't know that it exists, because Nuke doesn't know that it has to look into this folder. So in your Nuke folder, you don't initially have an init.py file, but it's basically just a text file. So you can just make a new text file, which is in the Python language. And if you open this, what you need to add in this is this little command that tells Nuke to add that path to our sort of list of paths to look at. So it will look into that folder. Now this is actually a file path in here. Because this init.py file is already in this folder, then it knows that it has to look in there, but you could actually type it in this fashion as well. C users allar.nuke with some disclaimers with regards to using forward slashes and backward slashes in Windows and Linux. But at the moment, it now knows to look into this folder. So now it's looking at this folder. It now knows this Gizmo exists. But what we would like to have is we would like to have a button somewhere on the side on a toolbar that would tell us that would allow us to pick this Gizmo and use it. So we have these other Gizmos that I've installed elsewhere. So I might want one for myself as well. So what we need to do for that is we need to add a command to this menu bar in here. This toolbar on the right is called, we need to access this toolbar. And the way this works is that in the folder that you have created, you can make another text file in here. going to make a new text document. And I will call this menu py, and it has to be called that. And inside of this menu py file, we will say we first want to access this menu on the right-hand side, sorry, on the left-hand side, which is the nodes menu. And once we have managed to get access to that, we want to create so this toolbar on the left, we want to add a menu to that toolbar. And this menu that I'm going to add, I'll just call it Escape Gizmos because it's a reasonable name. And that's enough for now. And I might also want to, and then I will want to actually into that menu, I want to add the command, which is create this Gizmo. So first of all, I want this button that I press to be called something. Usually the name of the Gizmo is a reasonable name. And then what we want is we want Nuke to create this node called Escape Additive Gear Gizmo. So if we save this, we will have to open a brand new instance of Nuke. So you have to close Nuke and open it again. And we should now have an extra menu in here, which is this one here. And this gives us an Escape Additive Gear Gizmo. So that's cool. And the main thing I want to show about this is now that we are using this Gizmo in this new script, I'm just going to get my, let's get my, just the read node in here. Let's get the read node. Actually, let's get these two as well. Read node, constant, and let's get this background. So I'll just quickly connect this. That's my background. That's my clean green screen. That's my mask that I don't need. So I'm going to use this foreground. And again, it's great that I've used namings for this because that makes it easier for me to connect them. If I now save this script, I'll just save it on my desktop and call it test. If I open this script on my desktop, notice that inside of it, we only have a read node, a constant, the other read node, the reformat node, and this is where it says Additive Gear Gizmo. And even though the Gizmo itself actually contains many, many other nodes, that Gizmo now lives somewhere else. So Nuke, this is why Nuke will need to know and why you will need to tell Nuke that if you save the script somewhere else and you take it to another computer at work, that computer will also need to know how to find this Gizmo. And this init.py here is telling us to go and look for this, look for all the plugins that are inside this other folder. So that's how Nuke knows that there is a Gizmo that's called Escape Additive Gear. So that's the important part in here. It only contains a reference to that tool that you have created. Cool. That's everything I wanted to say about creating Gizmos, about user interface design, and how to install Gizmos then onto your hard drive. So finally, there are a few cool Gizmos that I like using myself. There are many. I've picked a couple just to show you as well. So there's a quick list in here. I will answer questions in a few moments. And so there's a few quick Gizmos in here. Let's just quickly look at a few of these. So Stickit, for example, is one that was created by this guy called Mats Hackbart-Lund. And it's great. It's basically very similar to Smart Vectors and came out before Smart Vectors. And and it's a sort of a tool that uses pins in the spline warp in order to do warping, and it gets those spins by doing some tracking using a camera tracker first. So camera tracker makes lots of points, and it turns all those points into pins. So it's very, very clever. Another quick one is Embers. It's a quick particle tool set. Creates Embers, very simple. Then we have this one is just interesting if you're interested in cybernetics and you're a big fan of Norbert Wiener. He had this algorithm that takes blur images and tries to unblur them, which is very clever. Very hard to actually make this work with any real footage, but it's a kind of fun idea of like looking at this from the kind of starting point of view. So if you take a blur image, you try to unblur it, assuming you know how it was blurred. Reproject 3D, which takes a position pass and allows you to project onto CG. So you don't really need geometry if you have the position pass, and you could project stuff onto it. And that has saved my life in some tricky jobs. I really like this perspective line gizmo. The perspective line gizmo allows you to draw perspective lines into your image. And based on those perspective lines, it figures out where the horizon is, and it actually creates a camera for you that it positions into the scene. And that's really, really nice. Very helpful for still images where you can't use a camera tracker. And finally, and this is just a small list of things that I kind of have found on Nukepedia. Despill to color. One easy way to despill things better, if you can choose a target color for them, and then use that. So how do you kind of go about installing these things? Basically, you need to download them. And let's try Despill to color. Actually, have already downloaded a few of these. It's very easy. Make an account on Nukepedia. Do browse them. Browse Nukepedia. Follow Nukepedia on Twitter as well, because whenever anyone uploads something, it sends a tweet. So let's pick Embers, for example. So Embers has been saved as a Gizmo. So one thing you will find is that when people upload stuff to Nukepedia, quite often they actually include their own menu PIVA files and things like that as well. So quite often it's not just the Gizmo, but for example, the Reproject 3D and the Embers Gizmo, they are simply Gizmos. So how do you install them? Exactly the same way that you installed your own Gizmo. So I'm just going to drop it into a folder here that I have for Gizmos. I'm going to drop this Embers Gizmo in there. And I'm going to use this menu PIVA file for that. And simply add one more line to it, which will be referring to that Gizmo. And when you've made this Gizmo, or when you've told Nuke that this Gizmo exists, save our Nuke script. Let's open a new instance of Nuke. This Embers Gizmo here as well. And when you use this Embers Gizmo, hopefully to make some embers. So it's sourcing some particles at the moment. You can see, again, this is very good sort of interface design. They've exposed things, different things from the inside of the node, but also exposed them in a way that's in tabs. So basically, it's organized, it's clean. So it's kind of much, very helpful to kind of have these things in separate stages, so that you can kind of just get to using it. So if you want a different color for this, it's very easy to find the button that's actually going to give you the color. So if I want them to be green, I can have green embers. So this is a good example of interface design. But what I might want to know is, how did this person actually make this? And if they made their Gizmo in a similar way by simply grouping nodes, you can actually copy it into a group, and then you can look inside of it. So then you can see how they have put their Gizmo together. And this is really, really nice about Nukepedia, is that people share their Gizmos for free, and for a lot of them we can actually see inside of them, see how they work, and suggest improvements. And there's this whole community around Nuke users who keep making these kind of good and useful tools, and this is how you can kind of keep learning as well, because quite often you don't need to make your own tool. Maybe there's already one that's actually out there. Cool. That's everything I wanted to say about this. I will quickly check if there's any Q&A. Seems to have been asked and answered. So I'm pretty much ready to wrap it up in here. I will just say a few concluding thoughts. So first of all, this what we've looked at today kind of demonstrated how to make tools. Within this, we looked at a little bit about this kind of technique of additive gear as well, but this is not what the keying script was about. I just wanted to show you, this is the keying scripts that my students do, and this is simply foreground, background, and putting them together. But actually, if you're trying to do a good keying script, it's a lot of work, because here, for example, you have to deal with things like hair details in the foreground, which then actually goes soft, and the background is soft, but then actually becomes sharp. So all of this in here is dealing with alpha channels, with edge treatments, with getting all these colors and details. But this is all kind of something that you can do if you even if you've never learned Nuke before, but you come to our courses, then this is the level that we actually teach you. So it is very thorough and focused on actually making shots as well. So these scripts in here, they look complicated, and we try to make them simpler. And again, that is part of the process. Actually, this is a tiny script when it comes to keying, compared to this other one in here. This is normally what you would expect from a keying script. So that's just something to kind of point out. And another thing is that we do have spaces for courses that are starting in September. Since UK is still in COVID lockdown at the moment, there will be some adjustments that we will have to do to the delivery of our courses, but we already had to do it earlier this year as well. So just kind of wanted to conclude this by showing a selection of some of the student works that our students have done while they were in complete lockdown. So everyone was working remotely. They started this project just a few weeks before the lockdown, but then for most of the project, like 90% of it, everyone was working remotely, and this is the type of work that they were able to produce. So I'm just going to share this with everyone now. So that's everything I wanted to really say. So hopefully you guys will come and join our courses in September. The plan at the moment is they will be mostly in class, but of course we will look at the government guidelines. There's going to be a mixture of in class and online learning, but you can also see, looking at this, that online learning alone has also created excellent output from our students as well.